This mom was sure she knew what gender her baby was going to be, but things were not as they appeared. Most of the time, if you're pregnant and go in for an ultrasound, the technicians are usually pretty confident in being able to tell if your baby's a boy or a girl. For this mom, the medical team around her had her convinced that they knew what gender of the baby she was having. She and her husband had picked out a name, they'd got everything ready, and they'd even told their friends and family. What they didn't realize was that their story would be an anomaly. When you find out that you're expecting a baby, there's a high chance you go through a whirlwind of emotions. Your nerves might get the better of you to start with, but then the excitement might take over, and your whole life is eventually consumed with everything having to do with babies. One of the biggest milestones of any pregnancy is learning whether you're having a boy or girl, if you even want to know at all. Most of the time, it's easy for doctors to determine which one you're having, but sometimes things are not what they seem.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
However, to truly understand this story, we need to learn a little more about the mother in question. In 2010, Madalisha Hiscock's life changed forever. She was happily married to her husband and they'd already welcomed their first daughter into the world. They had their perfect life in Vereeniging in South Africa and they were quite content with their setup. Although the couple had always wanted more children, they never actively tried or put pressure on themselves to conceive. They were simply waiting for it to happen naturally. Although Madalisha and her husband were not actively trying, she fondly remembered how she felt when she discovered when she was pregnant with their first daughter. When she started to feel similar stirrings in her stomach and waves of nausea, she couldn't help but wonder if she was pregnant again. To make sure, Madalisha decided to go to the store and pick up a pregnancy test. She followed the instructions on the box and waited with bated breath to see how many lines would make their way onto the stick. Sadly, the lines on the home pregnancy test just weren't clear enough for Madalisha to make a clear distinction. Was she pregnant or was it just a false alarm? Madalisha thought in her gut that she was pregnant, but she wanted to be 100% certain before telling her husband, so she booked an appointment with her doctor to take a more accurate test. It was during this doctor's appointment that Madalisha heard the news that would change everything for her and her family. She was pregnant. Madalisha and her husband were over the moon to know that they would soon be welcoming a new addition to their brood, and they couldn't wait to find out if they were having a boy or a girl. Because they already had a daughter, they secretly hoped for a boy, but ultimately they just wanted a child that was happy and healthy. Thankfully, their first ultrasound scan confirmed their baby was growing at a healthy rate. The doctor also confirmed the couple were having another baby girl. The couple were not disappointed to learn that they were having a daughter. In fact, they were excited to know they were having another daughter. This fact was further clarified when the couple made their way to subsequent ultrasound appointments. The next two scans confirmed that their daughter was still happy, and they even confirmed that their daughter was definitely a girl. As the weeks bore on, they became eager to meet their new addition and couldn't wait to welcome her into their home. Madalisha was enjoying her pregnancy, and knowing that she had a healthy and happy baby inside of her made her feel incredibly blessed. With confirmation that they were having a girl in the bag, the couple started to think about names. They made their way through baby books to find the perfect name for their baby girl, and they spent hours deliberating which name they wanted to go for. In the end, they settled on the name Mackenzie. Everything was in place, and now all they needed was their little girl to arrive. Everything seemed to be going so well for the Hiscock family. Their previous 3 scans had all gone off without a hitch, and they'd even chosen the name of their upcoming daughter. However, things took an unusual turn when Madalisha made her way to her 4th ultrasound.
Then I went for another sonar, told me to go. Went for another sonar, told me to go. So okay, I'm happy, it's a go.
Although they'd been told that they were expecting a girl, the doctor suddenly changed their tune and told the couple they were expecting a boy instead. The couple were incredibly confused. How could this be? The doctor confessed that sometimes it's impossible to tell whether the baby's a boy or girl inside the womb. Instead, they all make an executive decision based on the information in front of them. Because of this, the doctor was able to determine that they'd been told the wrong information to start with, and that they would soon be welcoming a boy into the world.
Went for my other sonar for a 4th one, told me it's a boy. So okay, that's very strange, but okay.
Madalisha and her husband were bemused but trusted the knowledge of the doctor, so they came to accept this new change of fate. With this new piece of information in their lives, the couple decided it was time to get everything ready for their new arrival. They wanted to kit out the nursery with all new toys and decorations, and they needed to buy new clothes. After all, they'd never had a boy before. Like many parents, the couple decided to stick with the traditional colors and themes. They chose blue clothing for the new baby, and they filled the nursery with toy cars and toys stereotypically associated with boys. As their due date got ever closer, Madalisha and her husband decided to let the news slip to those nearest and dearest. They planned an elaborate gender reveal and told those around them that they'd soon be welcoming their first son into the world. Their friends and family were over the moon for the couple, and they couldn't wait to see the new arrival for the first time. Yet they had no idea that welcoming this new baby into the world was going to be much more dramatic than they thought. Finally, the day came and Madalisha went into labor. Thankfully, the process was largely uneventful and their baby took their first breaths just a few hours later. From first glance, it seemed as though the fourth scan had been right all along. They hadn't welcomed a girl into the world because it was obvious from their baby's physical appearance that it was a boy. The signs were all there and they had no doubts that they just welcomed a son into their lives. They were ready to take him home.
Congratulations, it's a boy. I was very excited. Yeah, I've got my boy.
Although Madalisha and her husband were happy with how their delivery had gone, there was one doctor who cast doubts over their new arrival. As they took the baby off to do preliminary tests, they noticed that something wasn't quite right. The doctor worked with newborns every single day and could tell immediately if something was a little off. In this case, they were convinced that something was amiss. This problem couldn't be seen physically because the issue was with the baby's blood and could only show up on specific tests. As the doctor looked into the baby's blood work more thoroughly, they noticed that their new addition had more XX chromosomes than XY chromosomes.
Then the doctor that helped us, she came to me and said, things doesn't look like I'm right. The blood shows more XX and that means more girl.
When it comes to genetics, the distinction between girls and boys is simple. Girls have two X chromosomes whereas boys have XY chromosomes. This immediately stumped the doctor. If the couple had just welcomed a son into the world, why would the baby have XX chromosomes rather than XY? This would mean that their child was genetically more of a girl than a boy. However, this wasn't the only anomaly that had occurred in Madalisha's new baby. Although the child was genetically more female than male, hormonally it was more male than female. In fact, testosterone was hugely prevalent in its body. Because of this, the doctor confirmed that the child they just welcomed was a boy. The couple were told not to worry about the anomaly in their child's blood and to go home and raise their son like any other parents. Madalisha and her husband were obviously incredibly taken aback by this new development in their lives. They struggled to determine the gender of their child during the first ultrasounds and the doctors were confused. What was going on? Rather than stewing on this fact, they decided to follow the doctor's orders and take their son home. They ditched the name they'd chosen for a daughter and finally decided to call their new child Kenny instead. Kenny was finally home and they could start their lives together. Although the couple tried to adapt to life as a family of four, they couldn't help but shake off the feeling that something wasn't quite right. They loved their son more than anything in the world and they were over the moon to have him back home with them. Yet there was a niggling feeling in their hearts that their son wasn't quite what he seemed. They knew that there was something unusual about their child and they wanted to get to the bottom of it. They needed to know what was going on. So the couple took their son to the local hospital where they explained their situation and asked for the advice of medical professionals. They told the doctors that they knew something was amiss with their son and how they'd struggled to pinpoint whether he was a boy or a girl while they were pregnant. Because of this, the doctors decided to run tests on their newborn. They completed a full physical examination and took numerous specimens from him to get the answers they needed. Thanks to these tests, the doctors were able to confirm that there was something slightly amiss with Kenny. In fact, the baby had congenital adrenal hyperplasia. This condition means that a baby's born with abnormal levels of male hormone in their body. This can often cause physical changes to the exterior of the body, which can often make female sufferers look as though they have male body parts. This is exactly what happened to Madalisha's child, who she quickly discovered was a girl after all. Within minutes, her supposed son had transformed into a daughter. As Madalisha and her husband listened to what the doctors were saying, they were in utter shock. They couldn't believe what they were hearing and couldn't believe what was happening about them. They had been raising their child as a son after the initial confusion. They'd named the child with a boy's name and they were convinced they had a son. The fact they now had another daughter was a little too much to handle and they didn't know what to do with themselves. As they started to digest the news that had come their way, Madalisha and her husband started to think about what they needed to do. For starters, they needed to change the name of their daughter. Thankfully, they'd already picked out their daughter's name previously, so they got in touch with the local registry office to legally change their child's name from Kenny to Mackenzie. However, the hardest part of their whole ordeal was telling their friends and family that they didn't have a son after all. Although the couple were relieved to finally have the answers they needed in regards to their daughter, they felt as though they had to start again. They had to prepare for a baby from scratch because they'd filled their lives with boys' clothing and toys. Because of this, the couple had to replace all the blue clothing with pink clothing and buy toys that were believed were more appropriate for a girl. The whole process was overwhelming, but they wanted to embrace the changes. Sadly, there's no treatment or cure for congenital adrenal hyperplasia, but it can be managed. While those who suffer from the disease do struggle with certain aspects of their lives, especially during puberty, modern medicine has allowed for new and improved ways of coping with the condition. Most notably, those with the illness can take cortisol tablets regularly, and they can even have surgery. Madalisha has since looked into her options and opted for this surgery to make her daughter's life as normal as possible. Today, Madalisha and Mackenzie are living a better life. Madalisha has since welcomed another daughter into the world, and they're now a happy family of 5. Although they struggled at the start of Mackenzie's life, her parents wouldn't change her for the world. They love everything about her, and her personality shines through more and more every single day. Now they're focusing on the future and building an even brighter life for themselves and their family. Their story truly is a magnificent one.
If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting too. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.